I'm going to show you how to put a condenser inside of a 1998 Firebird Formula. It's essentially the same as Firebird Camaro from 1998 to 2002. I did find this one video on YouTube from a Triple D hammer, which showed how to take it out, but it was sort of missing some bits and pieces. And I also wanted to show the installation as well, but thank you for this person who posted this video. It was helpful. My particular car is actually a right-hand drive converted car, so there are some changes in amongst here. I don't know if you can see the actual firewall here with all the air conditioning bits coming out of the firewall, which is completely different to the US models because now my steering wheel is on this side. Everything's been changed over. But that's not important right now. What's important now is to have a look at the new parts, and then we can actually see what goes where, because there are no instructions of the kit that I've purchased. I purchased an eBay special kit, and there's no real instructions on how to put everything back together. But the first thing I noticed is some of the items that came in the kit. We've got the orifice tube, and I have no idea where that goes in just yet, so I'm hoping to find out. Then we've got a whole bunch of O-rings. O-rings are seals that seal between the connectors, and you'll see those connectors in a minute. And we've also got some what looks like pressure valves and some caps for those pressure valves. So I'm not 100% sure whether I need to replace these. Possibly not. But I'll just make note of it for now, and I'll leave them here so that they'll be handy if I need to put them in. The other thing that was mentioned on this particular video on YouTube, so you can see this refrigerant oil, which I believe goes in there. So that's something I have to do before installing it as well. The other thing I'm going to do, because this condenser sits right in front of the radiator, right here, I'm going to cover this radiator over with a rag, just a thin rag, so that if I install something, it's not going to scratch up my radiator. Okay, pause for now. Okay, so the other thing that was mentioned in that video was the orifice tube installation, and I couldn't quite work it out from the video, but it looks like it is actually buried inside this here, this metal tube that runs across the top. And mine is actually tie wrapped to a cable cover here and here, so I'm going to have to cut those. This little switch connector thing is belonging to the Vintage Air switch, and so I'm going to have to unplug those cables, which I've done already, and then cut these tie wraps and then disconnect this here with a nut that holds it on right there, and hopefully we will replace the O-ring that belongs to that one as well. Yes. So yes, it is the pipe that runs across the top here. If you look inside, that is definitely the orifice tube that needs to be replaced, and also there's an O-ring here that needs to be replaced. So we're going to do that now, and then we'll put the condenser. Looking at the condition of this old orifice tube, that is not a good sign. That is so full of crud. That kind of worries me a little bit, because it kind of looks a little bit like the Black Death has gotten into it. But the last time I got Black Death on this air conditioning system was a long time ago, and that should have been replaced. Since then, as you can see, the difference between the old one and the new one is huge. I don't know why it's so bad. So that slides in here and just pops in to place. And then I'll be able to put this back onto the top. I'm going to weave it through the actual overflow tubing for the radiator, so I can flip that around the back and through here, and hopefully get it back into place like this. Obviously I'll need to screw that in. I've put a new O-ring on this connector here, and that will be joining up with the nut and bolt that I took off, the bolt I should say, which is that one there. And then I'll reconnect the switch, then I'll tie wrap this cable back on because that's just sitting there loose at the moment. The other thing you might have noticed while I was doing this is because when I took the old condenser out, I actually covered up all the openings with the plastic bag so that it doesn't get contaminated while it's just sitting there in the open. Obviously I'm going to take it off before I put the O-rings on, but just thought I'd let you know that's what I've done there. Just a bit of extra protection. Put the elastic band around some of these. Some of them is probably not that important, but it's just as extra protection in case I contaminate something. For now. Okay, so just having a look at the O-ring situation, because I don't have an instruction manual of any sort whatsoever. You can actually see on the old connectors, here is one for the top. At the bottom of the connector, between the little round bit here, which is not quite a washer, but it looks like a washer, underneath that is a rubber O-ring. So there's one here where it connects up, and that will drop down and screw in. And then we've got another one right down the bottom. You probably can't see on video because it's sort of accessible from underneath the car. You can go up from underneath the car. You'll see another connector at the bottom there that goes to the bottom of the condenser. So there's one at the bottom, one at the top. There's one right up the back here that goes into the firewall eventually. So that's 1, 2, 3. There's a third O-ring here, and then a fourth O-ring here, which runs to the other side of the firewall in front of the engine. That's all the ones that I can see, and that's all the ones that I understand I need for now, even though there seems to be a lot more in the kit. So I might have to have a look and see if there's anything else I need to do there. Okay, so what I've done is taken the old O-ring off, and it just simply slides off. You can use your fingernail or fingers to sort of pull that off, and it slides off. What I've done is match the same shape and size to one of the ones in the bag. I've already put that on there ready to go, and I'm going to do the same for the other 3 connectors right now. So just to show you how those O-rings come off, see this connector here. This is a connector that goes into the dryer. The dryer normally sits here, which you'll see later in the video. But just to see how that O-ring connects in, simply I just put my fingernail behind that little bit there and slide it off, yeah? The same should apply for all the other connectors, just to show you how that comes off. And then I've got to find one that matches it. Okay, cut it. So just to show you some of the old O-rings, these are the 2 old ones which I've already removed. There's a smaller one and the bigger one that goes to the dryer. I've actually noticed quite a bit of wear on the old O-ring here. I don't know if you can see that it's sort of squished down a bit. At one stage I actually had the fluorescent dye put through it, and you may even be able to see this on the video where it's actually starting to push past where the seal is normally on this one. And here's the new one in comparison between the 2. You can see that the new one's got a good nice rubber on it, and that should seal up nicely. So I'm going to have a look at the new dryer as well, because we want to make sure we've got all the bits and pieces ready for that. And in the bag, of course, we've got these seals that have to come off, and I will probably need to check that we've got everything ready to connect up to that in the car, which I think we do. Got all the 4 O-rings in there ready to go. The only thing else that's in this bag is this, which is the screw which is similar to this one here. This is the old dryer, which we're taking out, and obviously we need to pop that into here. Always like to start with the new screws instead of using the old ones. And that has to screw in there. And I've left the nut on the old one, but I'll be taking that off and using that to screw it in once we're done. So I'm just going to put that in there first. Get the dryer ready, and that should just screw in. Obviously we need to take that off as well. That cap comes off there. I'm just going to put that screw on there for now. I'll obviously need to remove it to put the thing back together again. I'll take this off while I'm at it, and we shall put it in the car and make sure it fits up properly. So what I've decided to do is put the dryer in first, and you might notice these little screws that come, the bolt I should say, that comes with it. It's got the shorter side and a longer side. You'll actually notice on the connector here, this is the short side and this is the longer side, because the longer side here will need to have a nut that goes through it that holds it in place. So I'm just going to make sure that screws in first. I'm going to line everything up by hand. But before we go screwing anything in, I just want to make sure that everything lines up by hand. And the reason why I thought I'd do the dryer first is to just make sure that everything's covered up so that we don't risk any more contamination of things now that they're exposed. And I'm going to line this one up as well. Again, the shorter side is here, the longer side is here, purely because this, if it's longer on this side, might actually end up hitting the dryer itself. So I'm thinking that makes sense. We just line that up by hand. As I said, we've got that nut in here. I'm just going to put that hand tight for now. I'm going to tighten that up a little bit more later, and I'll get the screw and put that on hand tight here as well. Got to make sure that lines up properly so that it's going to sort of sit there and seal up properly. It's got a bit of movement in it. I haven't screwed in the dryer yet. That just has like a clamp sort of screw on it that holds it in place. Otherwise it just sort of sits into the clamp. Okay, stop. So just looking at the new condenser, which I mean looks okay. These side things are a little bit different, the little side tanks. I'm not worried about that. I'm a little bit concerned about this bend though here, because that's meant to be straight. I assume it must have been damaged in shipping because it's got a bit of holes through the side here. I'm going to try my best to straighten that out. Hopefully that will get it sliding into the slots where it's supposed to go. And it looks like that might be okay. A bit of bashing with a hammer might help, but I think that will be alright. Fingers crossed. We're going to put the condenser in next. I've already put this connector back on. I might just double check that in a minute, make sure that's all in properly. We'll put the switch back on. I'm going to tie this back on in a minute. But more importantly, the condenser, when we put it on, you'll see these little plastic tabs. That's where the metal tab slides into on there. And there's also one at the bottom. And there's also one here and also one at the bottom here, so that when it slides in, those metal tabs have to slide into where the plastic tabs hold it on to. So I think maybe sliding in the bottom ones, trying to line those up is probably a good idea first. I'm going to get the part and do that now.